What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Monday Resultsdb show. For the previous weekend's PGA tournament, we had the Wells Fargo Championship. Back as always with my guy TJ Laessig at TJL5124. TJ, what's happening, man? How you doing?
The return of Rory. He's back.
Yes.
Best golfer in the world yet again. But no, on a serious note, great performance from Rory. And I know, unfortunately, neither of us were really on him this week. So not ideal from a personal perspective, but I think it's good for golf overall to have Rory back in the winner's circle. It's been a little while.
Yeah, certainly something. He stole a little bit of the thunder there. It was Mother's Day yesterday. Shout out to all the moms out there. But it felt like, for him, his first winning tournament with Poppy there. His wife was with him. It was nice to see that after. And it's always good when you got all these guys firing on all cylinders. We had Brooks get a win back when. We had Spieth battle back. We've got Rory now. The one thing I guess I didn't take into consideration as much, I know like the Masters and the Players had some patrons and some fans there, but this felt like, I don't know, just the pro Rory crowd, the big crowd. And he talked about it during sort of the comeback off of COVID, how the crowds were, he needed those. He feeds off them. He wants those. Like they said on this broadcast, literally the most pro Rory crowd you could probably find out there. He's already won the tournament twice there. He was going for his third win. And of course he did his thing and closed the door. The competition wasn't, that strong. Some guys were there. Love to see Hoblin and Answer make those late charges. Always, cool to root for Keith Mitchell. I didn't want to play a bunch of them there last week, but I know, we've been sharing cards, has been on him for a long time. I followed his game for quite a while now too. So to see him in the mix was kind of fun. He didn't let Rory have the thing, but yeah, it was down the stretch. I thought it was crazy on 18. I really did think that went into the creek there and it didn't quite go in, but then he still took the drop and made that shot. That was just incredible on 18 to finish it out. So good for Rory, good for everybody that played Rory. We're going to see a lot of those when we go through the lineups here. Hop right into it here, TJ. Any other thoughts on the tournament of past? We're going to get into it plenty here, but anything off the top?
I think it's just a fun tournament. I mean, that's the kind I find the most enjoyable, where it's not like overly difficult, but they're not just out there making birdie on every hole. One shot that definitely stood out to me was, I forget exactly which hole, but Rory had that 374-yard drive yesterday. Oh, yeah. It's just like, my goodness, how? Yeah, it's just bombing the ball out there.
Yeah, I believe I saw it afterwards. I know a lot will be made of his short game because that's sort of what everyone's, saw. The putter was working well for him. Any tournament, I don't care if he's on or off his game, when his putter's working like that is going to be helpful. But I believe he was still, I saw the stat with Justin Ray there, top 3 for, I believe, driving distance, greens in regulation, and strokes game putting. So it wasn't just the putter. It was, nice to see that he had that going for him. But I mean, there was one round there he gained huge on approach. So he's definitely still fighting through the swing a little bit because he's switched it over to a full cut. Now he's trying to go to work with Pete Cowan, the swing instructor, and everything that he's done, that, working with Brad Faxon with the putter. I mean, it's all lining up. So definitely will be, I believe I saw today he moved to the favorite at the PGA Championship here in a couple of weeks. We do have the Byron Nelson in front of that, but we won't see Rory there. A lot of the other big names, though, are in the field. Lots of content at Rotogrinders, Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast with myself and Kenny Kim. Bring all that to you guys to try and get you up to date on as much of the information and the plays, picks. And then, of course, Wednesday, the fun all comes down to that with my lineup construction show, where we're going to be going and looking what people are doing out there. TJ, you and I had the pleasure last week of going through that. So this is always the fun, the wraparound, where we get to look at it all. For those that haven't joined us in the past, real quick, just going on rotogrinders.com, PGA, you go to Resultsdb, simply change the date to the Thursday start time for the golf tournament. Here it was here. You switch contests, and then all of your options are here. The prize pool, the buy-in, the prize, the top prize, the amount of max entries, how many ended up entering it. And I've already got them preloaded here. So we are going to hop right in, and we're going to start with the flop shot. TJ, I looked at it, coming in. I thought it was maybe a duplicate lineup, but our guys, RG member, Ski Basher, just tearing up the MME streets as always. He's back at the top. I'm going to look into a little bit of his pool, some other familiar names that we've seen, Nerdy Tenor, Court Jesters, of course, all over the place. JBC, he's always crushing. So we're going to look at some of this, but it actually wasn't a dupe at the top. It was a 3v3. KR O'Brien, shout out to them. They chopped up 140K each, and Ski Basher here. KR O'Brien had Rory Hoblin Fleetwood, Damon Wallace Mitchell, and Ski Basher had Answer, Vegas, and List substituted for Fleetwood, Damon, and Mitchell. So it's crazy when you get a unique, when you get to the top of the tournament, you have a unique lineup, but it ends up chopping still. There's probably nothing worse than that, especially in a sport like golf where there is the 0.25s and you can see 0.05s and all of those things. But we'll start with KR O'Brien here. TJ, just anything that stands out with their lineup. And then, obviously it's a great lineup. It's the winning lineup, but some of the stuff from construction stuff that we, talked about on Wednesday that you could bring across maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty nice balanced build here, starting with two guys towards the top that are some of the more elite golfers in the field, but not the most expensive one. So Rory Hoblin, I like that as a start, gives you a lot of salary to play with the rest of it. This lineup in particular stayed out of the 6K range. The one that tied it did dip down into Luke List. But I think the other thing that we noticed here is, kind of the 3-3 split in terms of ownership. So Hovland and Wallace as two of the chalkier plays, Rory coming in a little on the lower teens, and then three guys that are relatively lower owned in Fleetwood, Damon, and Mitchell. So definitely a solid build overall. Not as many guys that I was on in this lineup, unfortunately. The other one had a little more mine, but I wasn't really on Fleetwood, Damon, or Mitchell personally this week, but definitely a strong lineup and a lot of nice leverage with those plays.
Yeah, I like the setup of it. Like you said, some of the stuff to bring across, you mentioned there, like the setup of it. So, the 22 and 17, and then you got two guys around an average of 10, and then two below 5, call it, because Damon's right at 5 and Mitchell wasn't getting much love at 2.2%. So certainly like the overall setup of the lineup. Stayed away from the guys at the top, right? We, instead of going with JT or Rahm, who both I thought, on paper, especially coming in, we're talking results based now, but those were fine plays on paper, by all means. Coming in, JT just couldn't find a putter again, had himself a pretty good weekend. Otherwise, looked at him for round 4 showdown because of that. I'll always look at Victor Hovland for round 4 showdown, but he just continues to go off everywhere, right? It doesn't matter if he's seen the course before, it doesn't matter what. He's just perfect for these setups. I certainly like him coming up at the PGA Championship as well, which we'll talk about when we get there. I'm sure he'll be massive chalk by then, because once the field gets filled up with everybody that's in it and the pricing comes out, it's hard to really put him up there, but hopefully we get like a 10,000 price tag or something like that, where we maybe get a little sticker shock from some of the other names around them, but certainly elite, just everything that he does. So great play there. The setup with Rory, nobody in the 6K range. This is the theme we'll look at today and just see. We're going to go into Ski Basher here in a second, not just their lineup, but their player pool as well, because it's now at least the second time, I believe, in the winner's circle that we've reviewed Ski Basher, if not the 5th or 6th time that we've seen them up here in the top 10. So their MME process is certainly very sound. Like you said, as far as who the plays were, I don't love the plays, but the plays worked out. I had the wrong plays last week. My pool certainly doesn't look good. I played all the guys that I said I would, and they did not come through. We'll just say that. But other than that, I think, this is just a common theme. And then lastly, just, for this lineup, putting in Fleetwood at 8K there, when we saw, all of our builds, the average was 7,300, right? We looked at all those setups last week on Wednesday, where you could go through and see what the average remaining was with the most common starts, and it continued to leave 7,300. So I like just sliding an 8K guy in there to round it out instead of having 4 7K guys. Not that it couldn't have got there, just to show, how you can just make a little one-off move that can set yourself up to be a little bit different. Now, let's go to Ski Basher's lineup here, and you can tell me your thoughts on this. Like you said, it is a little bit different, but I think some of the same theme that I just talked about there can be applied.
Yeah, definitely. And this is obviously super similar lineup, but more along the lines of some of the guys that I was personally targeting. So we see even more of the typical structure that we see, where we've got Hovland and Wallace right around 20%, got Rory and Answer right in the low teens, and then two guys right around 5%. Jonathan Vegas was someone who was in my value plays article, just someone that I tend to look to target on courses where you have an advantage with distance. He obviously didn't come through in a massive way, but at least was able to get through the cut. Luke List had a strong showing, tailed off a little bit yesterday, but a lot, looking here, a lot of ball strikers is what I would say is what we're looking at. Abe Answer, I know, is someone that you were onto and pretty high on, someone we talked about on Wednesday as well. Yeah. But yeah, I like this lineup a good bit, and similar overall structure to what we just saw with the other one, but a little bit more, kind of not quite stars and scrubsy, but going with an upper 8K guy instead of that 8K flat with Tommy Fleetwood, and then having to dip down into the 6K range with List, and then right at 7K flat with Vegas.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit because of that. Actually, this is what I was saying at the top, is it definitely goes with what I said. You and I built some of these lineups last week, a little bit different. We had JT subbed in for Rory or Rom. We did both. And then we had guys like Hovland or Connors or some of those guys in that range that were pretty popular. Even Hovland were in some of the mix that we built out, where we'd have like a Rom Hovland, and it left around that 7,300 range that I just talked about. And we looked at it as, different guys, but we were showing ways where you could just pop one guy up into the 8K range, like an answer. And then we were popping one guy down into the 6K range without going too aggressive. Like realistically, List was a good play here. The field liked him enough. It's just not as many people go down to this range. So 5%, same with Johnny Vegas. Everybody liked him. You wrote him up. I liked him. Cards liked him. I think 3 people had him tagged on the lineup HQ setup, but 7%. It's not like he was too heavily owned. That's just, for a value play, it's a fine number. There's plenty of lineups, almost, 9.5 out of 10 lineups, give or take, won't have them 9.25. So it's like, it's not that crazy to go with a guy like Vegas there. And then, the flip side would be, 22, 17, 11, and 12, and then 2 guys under 10%. Pretty good setup. When you can start your lineup, anytime you can start your lineup with Rory, Hovland, Answer, you're in a pretty good spot. You got to trust some of these guys down low, but it's not like Vegas and List were too far off the board. So let's do this. Let's look at Ski Basher's setup here, because like I said, he or she, whoever they are, they've been crushing it nonstop all season. So here's their setup. TJ, tell me your thoughts. Obviously, a lot of leverage we see right off the hop, but started with Finau and Rom, which is interesting.
Yeah, it goes to show that you don't need to hit on every single play, right? The 2 highest owned guys that they had, 2 of the most disappointing plays of the week. I know that the 2 of us personally both felt that. I was definitely high on Rom, high on Finau. Didn't work out. And then, lots of leverage here. And with a lot of these plays, not just getting 2x the field, but often 3 and 4x the field. So like seeing that. And then it looks like a little bit of a tighter player pool too. Maybe they mixed in some differentiation down towards the bottom, but I like that. Only 10% on Rory. So just so happens that one of the 10% of the Rory lineups happens to be the one to hit. And then, sprinkling in a mix of some kind of long shots. Looks like a bunch of cheaper plays down there, and even some more one-off. So I like that. I like this construction overall. It kind of has a good mix of taking the plays that you like the most, making sure you get way overweight on them, taking a couple where you're going right around the field, and then just sprinkling in a few down at the bottom as kind of shots in the dark.
Yeah, I really like this pool because I just don't know. It's just the way she goes, though. If you look at some of the guys I was on last week, all these guys, Reed, Rom, Finau, JT, I don't see him here, but I was certainly on JT. Suh was one of the plays I liked down there. He or she, Ski Basher, was aggressive with Justin Suh at $6,100 coming into the field. It did not work out. So that's just another one that didn't work out. But a lot of these guys, I love Cam Davis, love seeing this. That was certainly a play that both you and I love to be on at 7,100 when, you get all that opportunity. If he makes the cut, the upside is there. Didn't quite come through this week, but 69 is not horrible when, Rory's at 100, it's 70 points and he's 7,000 to Rory's 10,000. So it's about the equal or equivalent bring across as far as the numbers are concerned. There, we like Matt Jones. Like a lot of these plays, it just goes to show, like I said, it's all in your construction and getting the right one to shake out, because these are all, we like Corey Connors, Luke List, like all these guys were in the mix. Interesting points, like you said. So Rory only 10%. Some of the other guys are lower on. If you go here, another way we can look at this, I like to look at it through the lens of who everybody else was on in this field. So also, I was going to say this, took sort of the same approach I said with Hoblin. I said, look, I like Hoblin quite a bit, but he did kind of scare me a little bit at 9,800 when you did have the opportunity just to pay up for guys above. And for me, it was JT, Bryson, and Rom, I should say, not Rory. So, it was just, and even then I wanted X if I could get there, and I just couldn't get to him. When I talked to you on Wednesday, I was like, it's just not happening. Needed to have Rory though. But just going down the board here, just goes to show too, like, went under on Zalatoris, got off Tringali. That's, probably the right time to hop off the train, I guess.
Hopped off the train at the right time, right before it went off the rails.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So I'd like to see that too. But yeah, for the most part, played almost all of the quote unquote chalk. Again, we talked about this too, where you got a 156 man field and there was a lot of decent names in it still. It wasn't, one of these, low strength of fields or anything like that. It was, was pretty top heavy, but beyond that, not too crazy, but a lot of names that people like to play. So we knew we were getting dispersed ownership. We had that part figured out. So I did like to see that. The other thing I was going to look at here, like just going down to the bottom, some of the sprinkles, TJ, Haggy, I guess, most of these guys though were not 6K plays. The sprinkles are actually on, Homa at an increased price tag, or Ryan Moore, Hadwin, some of these got Fleetwood down there, right? 8% only snuck them into one. So, or a few like that. That's just goes to show, like, this is what I was trying to say earlier about these 6K guys. Like, we dig for them and we look for these gems in the rough or diamonds in the rough, and they're just not always the gems you want them to be, right? They sometimes, even if they do stand out, they don't always come through for your lineup. You can go with a guy like Luke List and be just fine. It's funny enough, he didn't have much Fleetwood. Ski Basher didn't have much Fleetwood, but K.R. O'Brien had Fleetwood on the lineup that tied them. So yeah, I don't know. Anything else that you want to look at here? Or we move to the next one. I think that's a good look at this one.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good breakdown. Always love to see the 150 pools of the people that are maxing out and getting to the top here.
Yeah, 503.5 took down the flop shot. And then you go over here. This is the $5. And interestingly enough, normally the more entries equals the better scores, but it didn't happen here. So some more RG members up here. Shout out my guy Riku. He's been grinding the streets ever since his big. I think he won 100K. We talked to him a few shows ago. The Dirty Sheik. I know this guy's a pretty good guy. JBC's here again. We might look at his this week, but at the top, TD33 Diesel with no vowels in a slang appropriate, pronunciation. 500.5. They were in on 50 entries, didn't go the full max, 150. Bryson Roy liked this setup, so I'll let you talk about it here. Some of the same guys we saw before, but a lot of upside in this lineup. I really like this build.
Yeah, and a lot of distance, I would say, in this lineup.
Oh yeah,
right? All guys that pretty much all guys that can bomb it off the tee. Actually, definitely all guys that can bomb it off the tee. So can definitely, say that they were going towards a course fit with that, and love the ownership breakdown as well. And you start at the top with Bryson and Rory, and then you have Grillo at 8K, and then three guys right around the 7K mark, but all people that have shown upside in the past. So I really like this for a tournament build. A lot of upside, like you said, all people that have done it before and maybe have a wide range of outcomes, but when they hit, they tend to hit pretty big.
Yeah, the firepower too. Again, I can't say for sure how they set their lineup up. I mean, if they were watching, they could chime in and let us know. But I think, Wise, Mitchell, List, just like you said, bombers off the tee. Obviously, Bryson, the biggest bomber on tour. Rory can certainly bomb it out there with the best of them and have the course history. And sometimes the part I was saying, I can't really speak for them on, but, just sometimes this is what I'll do. It's, in a sport that we always talk about, it's very tough to correlate beyond something like a course fit, like you just said, where you could say, okay, I'll get a bunch of guys together. Grillo can still pound it out there pretty good, and he's solid. I'm just saying, if you landed here, it was kind of like, do you want to play Grillo or do you want to play Fleetwood? Now, both would have worked out. Fleetwood put up 69 points. He won by over 4, and Grillo put up 71. So, he still would have won the tournament. But if you just want to stick with the theme and say, look, I'm already unique enough, I'm good to go, I don't mind Grillo, or maybe they liked Grillo. I certainly liked Grillo quite a bit. I tagged him up last week. I liked his this spot for him. And so this lineup just makes sense all across, kept the ownership in check, really mixed it, skipped that 9K range. So I do like that too, because 9K range was pretty popular, but by all means, there was ways to still get there. Even if you mix this lineup around some. So shout out to TD33 Diesel. I think that's a nice lineup. Again, I like the Bryson Rory start. I was going more Bryson Hoblin and then just couldn't fit the other right pieces in there. But I do like that setup for sure. Bryson made a lot of sense there. I think he'll make a lot of sense again this week. Just going to, it's NMuko1. His name's Riku. You can find him on Twitter. Really good guy. He's just been crushing it lately with betting and with DFS. And just to look at his lineup here. So, Hovland, Reed, Answer, Wallace, Davis, List. It seems so simple when you look back at it now, and it's probably the best non-Rory lineup, I'm guessing. Yeah, it is too. Wow. So he was hoping Hovland got in for the W. Rory loses the 10 points, drop into second. Hovland gains the 10 points, pop into first, and he is the winner if that happens. So it was close. Rory tried to go into the drink for him there at the end, and then could have been Hovland in a playoff, but what do you think of this lineup here? And then we'll look at some of the pools for this tournament as well, TJ.
Yeah, this one's really solid. I think, 6 really strong golfers, bit more of a balanced build, fading the entire 11K and 10K range and starting the lineup with Hovland, as you said, and leaving 600 on the table. So, Hovland to Rory there. And I think that, the 10 points would have got them to the top. But overall, really nice build here. Got our guy Cam Davis in the mix. A little bit on the higher end of ownership, but generally speaking, similar to the trend that we see with two of the guys in the upper teams, lower 20s, mixing in Reed Answer, Cam Davis in the low teens, and then List, obviously a popular one for anyone that's going under 7K. He pretty much was the guy that you needed in order to get to the top of these leaderboards this week.
Yeah, kept it around 75% total ownership. And then the other thing, you made the point there, I was wondering if you saw it, but yeah, the $600 left on the table. So realistically too, you got to remember there, like I don't really care about the mix as much at that point, even though it's still close, 20, 17, 12, and then either of these 11s could have been 9. And then it's kind of the same setup textbook that we're always talking about, but the textbook really just works out because nobody really ever gets up that high in golf. Like sometimes we'll get like a Dustin Johnson at 30% certain events or something like that. But even then it's quick to get it down when you roll that way. So you don't have to set it up like that. We just call it the textbook style lineup build. But as far as ownership's concerned, but it's really about the overall. And then when you leave the money on the table, you can do whatever you want. The clear path here looks like trying to stay under the 10K range and just start by getting unique by going Hovland Reed. And then you get away from that 7K build and you get into something like this. It's pretty clear. Like I said, it looks really easy on paper after the fact. I just didn't like Wallace. Like all these plays I loved last week. I liked Hovland. I was the only one who really liked Reed out of anybody. He didn't do enough, but clearly he could have been there. And then you've got Answer, who I loved, Cam Davis, who I loved, and then like List and Wallace were just whatever. But I didn't like Wallace. I didn't understand the chalk and just ended up working out. I know he had the incoming form and it stuck with him. I just didn't think it was the best setup for him, but he's a guy that can just grind it out. As we've seen, he'll certainly be in play upcoming at a lot more tournaments. Let's look though here. Look at his winner first, or his best lineup, I should say. JBC. You've got the setup here. Bryson, Rory again, Grillo, Woodland battled back. Pretty aggressive approach here. 2 1% owned golfers, 2 in the 6K range, completely skipping the 9K. I definitely don't hate this, but what are your thoughts here on this setup? And I'm going to, go as you're talking, just because I want to look at some of his other stuff, but 2 6K guys, right? And then really low ownership at the bottom end.
Yeah, and it's just a 2v2 of one of the lineups we were just looking at, right? Woodland and Rogers versus, I forget exactly who the other two were. Yeah, versus Wise and Keith Mitchell. Yeah. So 2v2 there. Like the lineup for sure. Yeah, 2 really low owned guys in Woodland and Rogers. So kudos to JBC. I'm be curious to see how many of those he had in the overall player pool, if it was guys that were just being sprinkled in, or if he was taking a strong stance there. But just another lineup where a lot of bombers, a lot of ball strikers. And I think I like that Bryson Rory kind of start. I think that was a sharp move for this past week at that kind of course where distance really plays a factor. Two of obviously the longest hitters on tour.
I think it works for 2 setups quite well. One that reminds me back to, what was it now? The Rocket Mortgage, when Bryson beat Wolf. That was another setup where the bombers can come into play. And I know that week was insane. Wolf was like $6,800. So kind of the way Luke List filled in here this week, it was just like a play because it fit no matter what anyway. It wasn't that tough of a course. There was so many scoring opportunities. And that's the second one I was just going to bring up, where these builds can really work nicely, is where there's a lot of scoring opportunities. Like I think this week could be another prime example where you don't have to go in the 6Ks, but if you are going to go to guys that are playing some good golf, set up well, course fit wise, can score on the par 5s. I know this week, I believe there's 4 par 5s and at least 1 drivable par 4, I believe, if not 2. So be another good setup. But that's where you can start mixing in lineups like these that make sense. Just going down the list, this one here was kind of nice. No 11K, no 9K, no 6K. So from a range perspective, that makes sense, and then just, keeps mixing it up. You'll see here, look at this, his top 3 lineups: Bryson, Rory by himself, no 9K, Rory, Hovland, Connors, Rory 2 9K. So just really mixing it up, right? Bryson, Rory with no 9K, Rory by himself with no 9K, and then Rory with 2 9K. So it's just, setting yourself up, obviously like List, we'll look at some of the other builds, but look at the pool, I should say, here just to see, because another guy that just absolutely destroys MME of all sports, and that's always nice to see. So really a more balanced approach, though, if you check it out here. So let's see how far it goes down. Quite a few golfers in the pool. 26%, the highest owned, and it's on Rory McIlroy at a 10% field ownership. But we'll look at something else after. You give me your thoughts here first, TJ, and then we'll keep it moving.
Yeah, really, really balanced here. A lot of ownerships that are flirting right around, or, maybe 50% above the field, which is something that we've seen before. And again, we've seen multiple different strategies work out for the people that MME these things. And, this is one of the ones that I personally don't tend to take this approach, but you can see how it works out and probably presents a more consistent range of outcomes on a week-to-week basis, because you're getting exposure to a bunch of different players. You're giving yourself kind of more outs, as opposed to really drawing a line in the sand and heavily betting on 2 or 3 golfers. So makes sense from that view, but also just looking at the names of the people here. I mean, all really, really solid plays, really strong plays, and people that, I think a lot of us were on this week. So it makes sense from that point of view.
Yeah, I really like the thought process. Just, sometimes you see these things, you think out loud. We've definitely reviewed ones like this before, but from extremely sharp players like we've got here. I just, for golf, where it can be so fickle, and we know week to week, like we just talked about how much you can get away with in golf. The winning lineup in the other was Ski Basher there had Rahm and Finau as his top 2 owned, and then a $6,100 Justin Suh at 26% ownership. So it's like, think about all the lineups that went. Obviously, some of those ones cross paths, so it's not going to say it's going to burn your whole week. But if you look here, there's still plenty of leverage going down the board. So you're still leveraged up, but you can get away with a lot more. Varner, Zalatoris, John Rahm, Shane Lowry, like these are just mediocre or terrible scores that you're getting away with, as long as you've got some of the guys right, which he's got Rory, quite a bit of lineups, that he's in right. He's got Bryson, Reed, all these guys still paid off, and you still got solid leverage on them in all reality, over 15% on Rory, give or take, Bryson's right there, almost 10%, Reed, almost 10%. Like, you're still getting over the field. And then you're still even with some of the guys that you kind of, for me at least, you look on paper and say, well, they seem like good plays, but there is still some fear there. Guys like Matt Jones, that was great when he put those 4 rounds together and just dominated the field and won a few weeks back, but will he do it again? Harold Varner, yes, he came second at the RBC Heritage, but will he come through here? It's tough to say, and he didn't. So but you're not dead, right? You've only got them in 16% of your lineups. Underweight on some of the plays that, again, are maybe a little bit the only thing we could say about Hoblin and Zalatoris were that we knew they were extreme talents, but possibly a little bit overpriced. But sometimes you got to pay up for probability. In the case of those two, you weren't getting the probability because they were still the highest 2 owned in the field. But again, 16%, 13%, not going away. Just happened to be underweight on Rahm based on circumstances of Rory and Bryson. So I like that. And then just to flip it for a second and go look at ownership here. Under, field, under, field. Like you're still involved, but on every single play, there's not a single 0% fade here, right? You might see a 4% on Homa and Harman, probably rightfully so. Again, it's almost like, I don't know, I'll flip it back over to you, TJ, but it seems to me like sticker shock was just a way to go underweight. So, we talked about Hovland at 9,800 last week. Okay. Going to be a little bit under. Zalatoris, I think, was the highest price ever in a field of this strength, at least. So, a little bit under. And then you look at guys like, I just had them down here that he went way under on. Homa, highest price ever in a field of this caliber. Again, rightfully so. He's been crushing lately, but it made sense there. And then Harman, also, people were making fun of the fact he was 8,700. We still liked him. He didn't quite come through, but he didn't have a bad week. I just thought, this is interesting to see that anybody with the sticker shock, it's just almost like, I'm not going to pay all that for them, but I'm not all out on them either. What are your thoughts on that here to wrap this one up?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like you said, golf is such a volatile game. Anything can happen on any given week. So to just take that underweight stance, but not be completely out. I mean, we've seen it plenty of times. We just saw with the previous winning lineup, right? If you just get a little bit of exposure to someone, they can still end up in that perfect combination where you have that one lineup that gets to the top. And that's all you need. right? You could have 150 lineups and you could have 149 of them not make the cash. But if the other one wins the tournament, it's well worth it. So I think that it makes sense. And I think it makes sense, particularly in PGA DFS compared to other sports, is what I would say.
Yeah, we just saw it with Ski Basher, right? First, then it drops to 274, and nothing better than a 450. It's just that outlier lineup that you're looking for to bring in 140,000 quick ones to be able to continue playing this game that we play and embracing the volatility. But I do really like this from a perspective. I'm going to consider something more along the lines of this, especially in these larger fields where we've got that. I would like to see, and I don't think we have a solid tool that we can look at this second to look it up just to see what his 6 out of 6 percentage was based on this. But the last point I would make is just, again, how top heavy the fields are. I'll look at something else in 1 second here, but we already talked about it. 50 drops to 20, drops to 10 because they chopped here. But you know what I mean? Like you're looking for that outlier. Going back to Ski Basher, right? It was what, 200,000 and then 80 for second, right? They're chopping up 280 here. Yeah, 280,000 between the top two spots, but it's $120,000 drop off from first to second. Like you're looking for that outlier. It doesn't matter that they only had like a small share of Rory. That's the lineup that got them there. And you can see that. We saw it with my buddy Josh last week, Cleveland for Life, when we reviewed his lineup, taking down the drive the green. You're looking for that outlier. And if you just go back here, the last thing I wanted to look at was with JBC, just to see if it was running same set or uniques. And it looks like 104.90. Rory the same 20. Yeah, all the same. So just ran the same 150 and just chucked it in both tournaments. Said treat it like a $20 buy-in with the opportunity to, a 15 and a 5 and get to the top of both of them. And then last, just go back here. If we look at it this way, at least get an idea, right? So 6 out of 6. I mean, these are definitely 6 out of 6. This is a 5 out of 6. It drops off pretty quick. So that just goes to show, there is some 6 out of 6s in there, but 5 out of 6s were still doing well last week if you had the right combination. So again, I like it from that perspective. That's why I'm not trying to drag this on, TJ, to spend more time on it for 2 seconds, is that when we've talked about this, you and I talked about it last Wednesday, Cards and I the previous Wednesday, about how it is getting more difficult to get these 6 out of 6 lineups through in these larger fields with only top 65 and ties versus back before. So you're getting these harder spots and you're seeing less and less 6 out of 6s get through. Another reason I like dispersing the ownership kind of like this, and I'm going to think about this a little bit more, is because you have a little bit more opportunity. Obviously, you could say, well, if you had 100% Rory, you're already, only need 5 other guys if you got that, but that's a lot more risk. This is a way to balance your risk while still getting enough outs and reads that you can get to the top. And then you've got your lineup set up in a way where you've built them accordingly to still have that chance, which obviously JBC is doing every week. So shout out to them. Shout out to everybody in this tournament. We'll move on to the next one. RG member took it down. J Knob. This is the $200. Oh no, just wait. I had it keyed up here. 2 seconds. This is the 3180. This one here was the next one. We'll go to that after. We'll leave the single entry till the end. What I was looking at was the 555 TJ. So stepping it up in stakes a little bit here, but his RG member took it down. J Knob with 473, put in 5 entries. Again, shout out to our guy Riku there. He's almost maxing this thing out. I got to give him a little bit of grief there. Why he didn't just go all the way. You chucked 20 and maybe it filled up too quickly for him, but got 10K back out of it. I saw he got 7,500 in another place, hit on a couple bets this week. So good for him. But back to J Knob for a second here. So Rory, Reed, Lowry, Grillo, and I like this lineup quite a bit. Schwartzel, Keith Mitchell, 49.8, 473. Little less to take it down, as we always say, but we'll get to some other guys in a second there. What are your thoughts on J Knob, the winner, 100K winner?
Yeah, no, I agree. I love this lineup. Some mixing in some different guys that we didn't see in the others, right? We did see Reed pop up in one. We've got Lowry, we've got Schwartzel. I know Cards was on Charles last week, so good call by him on that one. Keith Mitchell, of course, someone that we've seen popping up in all of these lineups, and pretty solid ownership breakdown. I think we talked about it last week, how a lot of the time in these smaller fields, we see kind of 3 people in the 15 to 25% range, and then 3 people under 10% as we get into the higher dollar, smaller field tournaments, and can see that right here. Great leverage plays on Schwartzel and on Keith Mitchell, and overall just a really strong lineup. Starting just at the 10K flat, fading the 6K and the 11K, and a nice kind of balanced build, I would say, after starting with Rory up top.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit for that reason. A couple of things about it, the 18 and then 15 are sort of the bigger, higher owned guys for this one. And then, 13, 9 could be a 10, and it still sort of fits what we're talking about, but left a couple $100 on the table, completely skipped the 6K range. And especially in a tournament like this, that's where, again, sometimes it can be a little bit too cute, right? You get down there and you try and hit those two, and then you mess up everything at the top or whatever else ends up happening. But Luke List made some sense here. You can convince me that Luke List and Keith Mitchell are very similar, so it wouldn't have mattered for the extra $200, and then you would add $400 more. Could have almost got to Hoblin, but didn't need it. Obviously, they won anyway. I'm just saying, when you're looking at stuff after, you could see how these things could play out. But I like sort of skipping the upper range. Interesting, the Reed's ownership here in the 555, right? 18.25%. So a lot more went with Reed. And again, probably getting into some of these more balanced builds and trying to make sure you're not going too far off the board. That does make some sense to me. So shout out to them. They got 5 entries in here and took home 100,000 on just over $2,500 in buy-ins. So definitely like to see that one. Just going back to Riku's lineup here, he did spend the salary in this one for the most part. Another guy on Reed, but back to just 2 seconds here, Jay Knob. 2 guys in the 7K. Again, we saw most lineups were using at least 3, if not 4. So almost like an MME play in the sense of which this is still, again, you can still put up to 24 entries in it, and it still is a large enough field. This isn't the, the $3,000 with 100 guys. This is, you still got to beat 801 lineups, or in this case, 800 for them to take it down. So I do like getting off the 3 or 4 7K guys. And then just going down to Riku here, he had 2 8Ks in the higher end, 2 9Ks in the lower end. So I do kind of like this setup while still utilizing, again, a little bit more ownership than we're used to seeing, but getting away with it here in this build. Any thoughts on his lineup? Because he won this a few weeks ago, and now he's definitely going hard at it, putting 20 lineups into it. But, at least got the money back on this lineup, and then some other cashes throughout maybe.
Yeah, another strong lineup here. Really, really balanced one, I would say as well. Sorry, what was that?
I said he cashed a bunch. I was just looking. He actually came in 14th as well. So just to see it here, this one maxed out. Went with the 11, skipped the 10s, the 9s, and the 6s. Definitely like this build. We talked almost about a build just like this, and that's probably why it's not the winner down in 14th. But we had some of these JT Rom starting points, skipping the 9K, going with our guy Abe Answer, and then seeing what you could do from there. But again, all 7K guys, this is where, one-offs could have been the difference. Right? You go up to, what would you do here? You got to drop Cam Davis down to List, get yourself about 10 or 11 points, puts you to 430. And then you can go from Stewie Sink up to Grillo and pick up, 20 points, 15 points. It wouldn't get you quite there, but 455-ish would add another one right where he is pretty much with the other lineup. So just little things like that. And looking at it, anything else here? I was going to look up at Fate Bender, because I love Osimo, M-Camp. These guys are always in the mix. We can look at them all day. But Fate Bender's another guy who we've seen with Ski Basher in the MME streets. And we'll round out maybe with this, just get a quick look at and skip the single entry stuff for today without getting too deep on you. Yep. But Fate Bender did max out the 555, and you can just go see what they did here. So, geez, I forgot Jason Day was even in the tournament. Him and Ricky Fowler. I know we joked last week, Cards and I especially, about on the Tuesday show about Rory, Day, and Ricky, which one was going to bounce back. I said, I don't think it's going to be Rory, and I definitely didn't think it was going to be Ricky after the thoughts we put in on Tuesday. And so I said maybe Day, but certainly not him as well. But any thoughts here on Fate Bender's pool? He did max out the 555 at 24 entries.
Yeah, I think we see this a lot from Fate Bender. If I'm remembering correctly, taking the aggressive stance in the MME pool. So can see that obviously going way overweight on Jason Day, way overweight on List, Ortiz, Cantlay, and really trying to maximize that leverage. And I mean, you can even see, right? Day, Cantlay definitely didn't work out. Ortiz, kind of worked out, but still found his way to get some lineups towards the top. But just goes to show, right? Here's a much more aggressive stance. And we've also talked about how taking the aggressive stance in more of a 20 max type tournament can make sense too, right? Where you're kind of drawing your line in the sand of, okay, here are the plays that I like. here's how I'm going to now build 20, 24 lineups around this core of plays, and almost approaching it like a single entry that you're then expanding on and being able to mix and match within your core group of players. So I like that strategy for the smaller, maximums tournaments.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there. We'll get out of here pretty quick, but I just think, 24 entries is the max. The only difference between this and a 20 max tournament is they don't put in brackets up here 24 max, right? It could be a 20 max entry, and then that's kind of a cool way to look at it. And like you said, sticking to the same approach. When again, got to remember this too. Obviously, Fate Bender, we know, has the bankroll for it, but not everybody's going to take that stance when they're putting their 24 lineups in of getting aggressive. I'm wondering now if Riku did as well, because we've been looking at his stuff for the past little bit, and just going back here, you see a much more balanced approach, and nothing wrong with it. Like we've talked about it plenty of times. There's way more ways to get this thing done, but I just do think, and I'm not just saying for Riku, but I do think most people putting this kind of money in would be happier to do this. Let's just get, all it takes is one. It's only an 800 man field. I'm going to have 20 in his case, Riku's case, 20, or in Fate Bender's case, 24. I'm going to play just to find that one that hits the top and play a little bit more balanced structure, like how we saw JBC play in the MME streets. But I do believe Fate Bender, just going back to that now, your point, TJ, I think it was Daniel Berger all in week.
Yes, that's right. It was. Yeah.
Yep. And they took down everything. So again, a lot of people say, it's 50%. It's not that aggressive. When you're putting 12 of your 24 lineups on Jason Day and Patrick Reed, you're taking a stance there, right? I don't care what stakes, what you're looking at. That's, move it over to 150 max, and that's 75 Jason Day lineups. That's definitely taking some risk on. Love to see it. Good for Fate Bender. I know, for them, they're in the streets every week in these higher stakes, and it didn't quite pay off here, but I would just go look at it, because again, that aggressive approach is the way to go here for them, and didn't quite get there this week, but love to see different things like that. Shout out Tom Roth. This guy reached out to me today. He's not related to Kevin Roth, but he said, looking at Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast, Kevin Roth's weather waves and things like that, put him on a all PMAM lineup with Rory, Reed, Connors, Wallace, Schwartzel, and List. I know I certainly didn't put him on Rory, but beyond that, definitely like to see that build and get his way up there. He ended up, I believe, 84,000 on the week. He showed me that he took down. So good for him, and shout out to Tom Roth. TJ, anything else you want to discuss, or else let us know where we can find you and get us out of here. I'll take us out of here afterwards.
Yeah, fun tournament. Another good one coming up this week as we get closer and closer to some more majors coming up in the near future. So I will have the same content schedule as usual. Value Plays article coming out for you guys sometime tomorrow, and you can find me on Twitter at TJL5124DFS.
For sure, man. Always fun doing this one with you. This week's, I looked at it this morning, got a lot of the same tournaments, so we'll be reviewing a lot of the same next week, but hopefully with our names at the top and some more Rotogrinders members. Definitely having a lot of fun doing the show this season. Like you said, the majors are upon us. We've already had the Masters. We've got the PGA coming up in a couple weeks, but certainly not going to be skipping the AT&T Byron Nelson this week. I almost called it the Bryson Nelson. You can hear my thoughts, a little foreshadowing there, but we'll be talking through it as always. Kenny Kim and myself on the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast. You can find me on Twitter at ToeTagginTambo. Be posting at the Listener League there for that. Rake free. Last week we gave away a autographed Bryson hat. DK chucked that in. Very nice to throw in a little gift. So hopefully that's getting sorted out in the back end. I'll be talking with them just after we get off here to get this week sorted out, see what we can come up with. Tuesday, we'll have myself, Noto, and Cards, as always, going through on the live free show that you guys can check us out on YouTube. And then Wednesday, myself and a guest will be going through using Lineup HQ here at Rotogrinders, checking out what the lineups are looking like, trying to bring it all together for the week. So hope you guys enjoyed. Other than that, thank you and good luck.